Thanks for everybody who has
Attending,
gotten here.
I'm attending this week the Chiplet conference, and I was wondering if the potential computing enclave can be in a separated chiplet by itself. So the solution for any application can be implemented in multiple chiplets, and one of them is dedicated to a separate chiplet. Does this make sense?
Anybody want to take that? So, Mena?
No, go ahead. You were going to start something in your Intel. You would know better than I do. You know what actually is involved at the chip level to make confidential computing happen.
Um, so I think that what we have today with the instructions integrated into the chip generally, um, I don't know what we would solve differently by restricting that to individual chiplets. So I think we might already have that problem solved, but I may not have understood the question.
No, I can add something to this.
Mhm.
I do think the fundamental transformative nature of confidential computing is the fact that you can from our perspective, right? It does many things, but fundamentally, it brings cryptography and randomness within the computing environment itself. And so to do a chiplet, the chiplet would have to have the full processor. A confidential computing chiplet should have the whole, processor in it, which I think is what ARM is doing and others, right? In basically bringing the confidential computing capabilities within the processing environment. What is interesting and that we are working on is the complementarity of confidential computing in the cloud and roots of trust in edge devices. So the idea of having cryptographic identity in chiplets. So Calyptra, and there's most companies here I think participate in the Calyptra root of trust at the chip level. A Calyptra can be and is designed to be a chiplet that could actually be built into virtually any chip, not just computing chips, but also peripheral chips and all that. So that complementarity between confidential computing and and roots of trust in edge devices, we actually, can show that you can't have cybersecurity, you can't have universal zero trust within those two pieces. And so those pieces go together. Isham, I hope that answer your question.
So, what is this Calyptra? Can you spell it? I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, please.
Thanks, Mena.
We can have
All
this
right.
Calyptra in one chiplet, and the rest can be different.
So yeah, Calyptra is would be in a chiplet. It's based on the dice specification, and it basically gives you cryptographic identity for the chiplet, and then it gives you measured boots and some level of attestation of the first runtime, firmware runtime. And then from there you can bootstrap the trustworthiness of the stack. But the complement, it's really that the two things can click very nicely together. That's what our logo represents. In fact, it's cryptography, hardware cryptography on both sides of the connection between a client and a confidential computing agent.
Okay.
I'll put the link to Calyptra in the chat.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
All right.
you.
One topic to get started before the agenda, and that's I think that's one of the best things that we can do is have these interesting technical conversations, and they don't necessarily have to be scheduled, but I will get us into today's agenda, and we'll see where we go from there. So welcome everybody to the February 8th meeting of the Technical Advisory Council of the Confidential Computing Consortium. We are an open and collaborative group interested in helping secure the world for everybody by using confidential computing to protect data in use. If you are not familiar with how to collaborate in an open source environment, I think just about anybody on the list here could help answer questions over DMs, or you could look at the contributing guides in any of our repositories, or feel free to raise your hand. If you haven't been here before, we'll have a little time for intros coming up in just a sec. As an open group, we also abide by the Linux Foundation's antitrust policy. You can read more about that at linuxfoundation.org/antitrust-policy. In today's agenda, we'll do what we usually do, which is remember what we did last time, and then get into the new business for today, where we've got a topic on, I think it was the Cloud Security Alliance and a glossary request that they have. And we'll have a talk about internships and mentoring facilitated by Yash and Nate. I haven't looked to see if we have Nate on the line yet.
No, not yet.
Okay. But plenty of time. And then we had a good discussion last time about our TAC goals and how we'll get organized around those. And then finally, Ben has pulled numbers for us to see how we're doing as we kick off the year. Any agenda items that I have missed? Okay, so like we discussed last time, I'm just going to flash by the official roll call slide, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on that, but eyeballing the list, thanks to everybody for joining. And as that list that I flashed by is just the people that vote if we have to vote, and we try to avoid voting as much as possible. We want to make sure that everybody feels equally able to participate here. So if you have not introduced yourself to the group before, you're not required to, but it's a good way to get comfortable and let people know who you are. So feel free to just pop off of mute and introduce yourself. Let us know where you're coming from and how to address you and what your main interest is in confidential computing.
Maybe I can go. I don't know if someone else wants to go first, but so I already, I think, was these calls and did this maybe twice, but it was definitely within the last 3 years. So maybe let me do one more and then
sure.
Let's keep it at that. So hi everyone, I'm Fritz. I think some of you already also know me. So there's this might be a little boring for maybe half of you, but at least for the other half, welcome and hi. So to me, I'm currently a security architect working on confidential computing at NVIDIA. But before that, I've been up until, like, yeah, this is just 3 weeks old. Up until that, I've been working at KU Leuven doing my PhD on confidential computing. And I worked mostly on Intel SGX on the attack side, but also a little bit on the system design side. And so I'm, yeah, let's say not new to the topic here, but I so far never had really time to join the TAC meetings. I was only like a lurker on the mailing list and read your emails, but I never had time. But now I think I will start to be able to join bi-weekly. So I will try to listen in more regularly now from the NVIDIA side. To join in. And I'm also the one organizing the FOSDEM dev rooms on confidential computing every year. For example, Mike and Sal were there last week. If you want to hear more about that, check out the outreach notes from yesterday, where they're like a summary on that. We had quite some cool talks on confidential computing by all the folks. So that's a good, just a small pitch for that. That's what I'm also doing. But yeah, that's just
Fritz, quick question specifically about FOSDEM. I didn't attend, one of my colleagues did, and brought back a interesting report specifically focused on bills of materials. I believe there is a very strong tie-in between confidential computing, because it does attestation, and bills of materials, because it becomes like a Schelling point, a common denominator for talking about, what is it that you're attesting? and I think if we brought bills of materials into our confidential computing sort of standards thinking, it would give us an easier path forward as far as compatibility with existing tool chains and whatnot. Are you the right person to talk about this, perhaps first offline?
I'm always the right person to talk to about everything, anything. But I'm definitely not the right person to talk about bill of materials. So I can give you the link to the talk, or I can also put it later in the chat here for the reproducible build talk that we had there. I'm happy to help you find the right person that might be interested in that, but I have no more expertise than just listening to the talk.
That would be sufficient. Thank you.
Mark,
Yeah,
that's me.
I'm also interested in that conversation as well, Mark.
Yeah, so I think one of the just a
So
quick
the last
follow-up.
person who spoke, who was that?
Nathaniel McCullum.
Oh, okay, and of course, yes.
Excellent. Yeah, those are all the right names. So one thing that I do want to make a note of from FOSDEM was that there was a lot more communication than I think CC has been thinking about for all of the related personas. So what you're talking to right there is sort of like compliance development, right? We need to be communicating to them. One thing we've also missed so far that there was a talk on was confidential computing and SRE, or site reliability engineering. These are all support engineering around our confidential computing engineers in large organizations. So they're personas that we should be communicating with and getting a better idea of what this looks like in a real deployment space. So that's it.
All right, great. Next hand up I see is it Ilaria?
Yeah, hi. I do not want to participate to this conversation because I don't have the confidence, but I just wanted to introduce myself. Nice to meet all of you. I'm Ilaria. I was actually a speaker at FOSDEM, which you just mentioned, and I'm a researcher in Amsterdam. And I'm here because I'm going to need your help. And I don't have anything specific right now, but basically, we are database researchers who are working on secure databases, and one of the technologies we are using is computational computing. So I thought I would join these meetings to get to know all of you and get acquaintance with how to ask for technical support and so on. So thanks in advance.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you. And if you aren't familiar with the mail list that Fritz just mentioned, that's one place to go to. We also have a Slack, and I think people can help connect you to those with links in the chat.
Yeah, actually, I haven't been able to join Slack. Thank you for reminding me. So if anybody has a link, it would be nice.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then Hank, I guess maybe you're gonna ask or comment on FOSDEM. I wonder if we should have like a little sidebar on FOSDEM before we get into the agenda.
I wanted to comment on Mark's comment.
Okay.
That is fine.
Yeah, sure.
So hi, Mark. This is Hank, broken records enthusiast. So when you will bring in the SBOM topic into the CCC domain, you will definitely not talk about the same thing when you say attestation, because an SBOM is an attestation, and our proofs of confidentiality and trustworthiness and as such are attestations, and they are definitely not the same thing. And so whenever you talk with SBOM domain and interact with them, please make sure that you are talking with the right attestation to save a few weeks of confusion.
I will bring you into the conversation before I reach out to anyone, okay? I just don't know your last name, so can you maybe send me a private message on the chat here, and then we'll connect.
Sure, Hank Burkholz, and we have talked a ton, but it's fine.
SBOMs are more of identity assertions than they are attestations, but yes, agreed.
So
yeah, and the NIST definitely has an opinion on that. So yeah, but yeah, let's do this offline and stop breath holding. Thanks.
Yeah. So like Lily's saying in chat, it is context specific, the word attestation, and I think that there's some projects out there that use attestation in a much different way than we use it in this context. Maybe I'll just kind of pile into this thread here. We also had Marcella come give us a tech talk last year, and that was on SBOMs and having trusted build environments and things like that. So that's something to uh, to incorporate into those discussions. Ophir?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to mention the talk by Marcella, the In Toto project, and others. Mark, if there is one of my colleagues at our company is also working on that, and it's in two places. One is around adding confidential computing, the attestation of the from the process that creates the SBOM, and this is related to our attestation, what we talk in these meetings, Hank. And the other is running the build process or part of it inside a TEE and proving that it was built there to prevent, I'll call it side channel attacks in the essence of the build process. So Mark Novak, if you are creating such a discussion, if you could also add me, I'll connect you with the right person.
Yeah, I'm making a short list here of all the folks I will start the conversation with. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Did we have anybody else who has not had a chance to introduce themselves?
Hello. Sorry.
Hi.
Hi. I'm Nate Waddington. I'm if we're doing introductions, hi, I'm Nate Waddington, he, him. I'm from Vancouver, Canada, and I work with the CNCF, a technical writer, and I help with the mentoring program. And Rian had invited me, so my apologies for being late to this meeting. It's a little bit early here for me on the West Coast, but I'm happy to be here and help out however I can. And forgive me if you hear coffee making noises in the background.
I will just be jealous if I hear those, so that's fine.
Fair enough.
Thanks for joining us today, Nate. We'll have you speaking with Yash coming up here in just a few minutes. Thanks for joining. Thanks for also letting me know your pronouns. That helps everybody engage. All right, I think that is everybody. But if I missed you, feel free to pop off or introduce yourself over the chat. All right, just a quick recap of old business. We have the project leads mail list up. So thanks again to Lily and Sal and everybody who contributed to getting that up. The NIST responses, we did a live session on the 226 document, and that got packaged up shortly thereafter and sent out. And then in the interim, we also had a response go out for the third NIST document of the year. So great pace on getting into the government responses here. And the last thing that we talked about, though I'm not actually sure if we talked about it, was the new project onboarding. So you see Jörg participating today from the Coconut SVSM project. That and a few of the other things that we voted in last year, the board had recently approved, and so everybody's in the process of getting ramped up. So many hands make light work. So the more anybody else can help out getting the projects ramped in and helping out with anything, the better. Ophir, did you have something?
Is there any update about the kernel SIG that we've been talking about in the past?
Sure. There is not an update that I have planned for today, but I think we really wanted to get that going end of last month, beginning of this month. So I think it's a matter of just getting it scheduled. There is a chat over in the kernel world where Dan Williams was soliciting agenda items. So I think it's just a matter of getting that scheduled.
Okay.
One quick note on that. Mike actually had a couple of good academic contacts, specifically at these last two conferences around the ABI discussion. We may have some interesting talks to come in on this as we are building out the SIG to come talk to the TAC. So it's good to see there's a lot of alignment generally on this. It looks like it might move forward.
Great. Great. And I know I had notes from some of you here individually on finding the right people at your company to bring into, or the right people in your projects rather, to come into that forum. For those that haven't seen this before, what we were talking about last year was it can take a lot of time to upstream things because you've got a lot of broad viewpoints and not all of them hit the list at the same time. And what has often been the case is the people who are actually developing for confidential computing are not the people who are developing for the kernel, sometimes even at the same company. And so if we can get those two groups of people together, people who are confidential computing developers, architects, experts, along with people who are kernel developers, maintainers, experts, we think that that'll help make it a faster process to reach good quality ABIs, good quality kernel artifacts. So we're looking forward to kicking that off shortly. Okay, new business. We have, I'm trying to organize this somewhat into the three main TAC goal areas that we have for projects, ecosystem, and community. And so two of the topics that we have there for ecosystem and community fall into that, and then we'll kind of come back up to the overall TAC goals and make sure that we are staffing in the way that an open source group can do to cover those different focuses. So this first one, I don't have much context, but I think Sal does, so I will hand it over to them.
Yeah, sorry to not be on camera today, but it was 5 days of conferences before today. So the CSA glossary, when I joined in, so this is the Cloud Security Association, they have been leaning on the CC definitions, which I think is rightly so, as a point of authority. However, they made a very good point that in order to pull out some of our major definitions, they have to go in and manually read through our white papers, which is twofold. So one, we can pull out our definitions and make sure that we have a current 2024 total agreement on them. And we can make these into just a machine readable glossary that's easier to search. And if we do that, the CC can have a online glossary and we can start extending this out to the groups that we are working really closely with, making sure that we have total alignment when we communicate. Bringing attention again to a good definition for attestation.
That's great. And for people that were involved in that conversation, does it need to be referenceable in like a citation kind of way?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit more color. Essentially, we're working with the CSA, and we're trying to get confidential computing concepts, as Sal said, having to do with attestation, having to do with roots of trust, having to do with you know, all the things that confidential computing relies on as primitives. And we kept finding ourselves summarizing the same definitions that are referenced in the terminology paper that is listed on the CCC. And we kept thinking, as those definitions evolve and change, the CSA link or the CSA copy of the definition is going to get stale. So we wanted to have deep links into some reference, some source someplace, so that when we use the terms that are probably being introduced to compliance folks for the very first time, that we kind of take for granted what the meaning is, it would be very difficult for them to follow the conversation without a brief introduction to the term. It's that kind of glossary that we're looking for. Since we kind of had that discussion, I looked, and if you do web searches, there's there are other glossaries provided by, well, NIST. I mean, you find hits in Google that link to documents, PDF files that are provided by NIST and other authoritative sources that have definitions. So we're kind of at that spot right now where everybody wants to provide their own definition. We want to have a single definition that's owned by the CCC. I think I'm speaking sort of as a community member here and using the royal plural. I imagine that we want to have an authoritative definition that we own. That's the purpose of the terminology white paper, but we need to make that more accessible. So that's kind of the whole problem space.
That makes sense to me. Hank?
I think there's a lot to be
Yeah.
said for a web page on the site saying definitions or just glossary with good definitions, kind of alongside the FAQ. And I think you can hear me now, which is quite nice as well. So
Yes. Go ahead, Hank.
Yeah, so Dave is not here anymore, so to speak. So he's not contributing on a regular basis. And so I guess I have to take somehow his spot right now. And there is RFC 9334, which Dave Thayer, of course, is a prominent co-author of. And that introduces remote attestation procedures terminology. It's RATs. So and in RATs, there's an A that is attestation, and it uses, and the document itself critically avoids the use of attestation because it is super confusing, and it's talking about evidence. So an attestation report is disambiguated and is it already evaluated? Can you have a policy from that as an attestation result? Is it evidence and such? So there is a set of terminology that I think CCC even charter to use, to be honest. So I think without Dave being here saying that, I think I should say that now. and yeah, that's basically it. So when we can inherit that, we avoid a lot of confusion. We can say that a RATS endorsement basically is an SBOM attestation, or in total attestation is something across all the things. And so we can disambiguate the problem a little bit. And I think that was what Alec was asking for.
Thank you, Proto Thaler. Yes, so we do have a terminology document, and my recollection is we did not want to redefine attestation, so we specifically pointed to the RATS document. But the rest of the terms that we have in there, and the term of confidential computing itself, all that stuff I think is great if we can have that indexed and referenceable by other organizations.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I mean, I love the RAT stock, and I've read it 10 times, and I understand maybe, half of it. It's a great document, but for someone who is in the compliance space, and that's who we're doing the community outreach with, it's a little too dense. We need to, I think, have a different set of definitions, and I understand that from a scientific point of view, from the computer science academic point of view, it's going to be an imprecise definition. But if we're going to make this technology more approachable, we need to find a way to connect with, people who are not computer scientists, people who are compliance officers in banks, and teach them why attestation is important, without them having the background to even be able to understand the RATS document. Does that, maybe that's a bridge too far? What do you think?
No, that's absolutely correct. It is a very dense document. And actually, the RATS working group was created to communicate, create a place to communicate on how to do this in the first place. Because there's of course the TCG, and if you look at TCG documents, the bridge would be even longer. It's a 7-mile bridge, right? So we're not at the keys here. I think we want to very small, but the Golden Gate Bridge would be nice. and so or maybe even something in London. And so the goal to have terminology that is approachable and is digestible has to also include these. Has to disambiguate the terms that are, for example, very SBOM-esque, or that are very TCG-esque, and so there are existing domains. When a manager approaches these terms, they get fed by some source first. They're inspired somehow. They want to do something because they heard something, because they know there's something out there. And now they come to CCC and are confused because we are not giving them the roadmap, the landscape to navigate. And I think the CCC is a very good place to create this map. But it's not just one glossary. I think it might be more like a little map that we have to draw here, and therefore point into the right direction.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
All right, Menno's first on the queue order that I see here.
Yay. Sorry, Sal.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to, we have, like all of us, I think we are experiencing the same issues when we communicate with non-technical people about attestation, or, even remote attestation. We also have local, TCC attestation or TE attestation. So it's, what has worked best for us is to talk about, that's why I was suggesting hardware attestation, because it's the physicality, the immutability of the thing that you verify. And so as opposed to human, oh, here is a software bill of material that has been put together by humans or machines, but it's not anchored into something that is immutable, that is physical. So the layers of maybe the physical layer type attestation or something else that grounds it into the chip, I think is something that people can relate to or understand, that is, it's something that doesn't change. That was my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Mike. If you're still able.
So am I next? Okay. Yeah. So I agree with all of these things. I was going to say again, we have to have an easy set of definitions on the page, on the website, where everyone can go to, and we have to own them. If we're going to be the CCC, we need to own these definitions. They need to be easily findable, and we've got to be the authoritative source. Otherwise, we're failing as part of our job. I really think. That's me.
So I lost track of the. Go ahead.
I just want to jump in just on an idea here, because we will be working with the LF research group to produce some assets. One of those is going to be a data visualization or a visual representation. So one of the things that I'm hearing here is a slight confusion between, yes, what we can represent in the glossary and what is still missing from that conversation and communication. If you have good ideas for data visualizations that you think represent genuinely the CC field, keep thinking about those and send me your ideas.
I just put a link in the chat. I looked and cannot find an option to raise my hand, so I apologize. So I suppose that what we might want to have as one of the links on the front page of consortium is basically in plain language sort of thing. So someone like a CISO decision maker, someone who doesn't have the whole day to dig into things can walk away understanding the fundamental concepts, but in a way that relates to your average, human with perhaps an associate degree in computer science and not much more than that. So I put a link to an article at like my attempt to say this. And if we could just perhaps expand this to other things that we feel people have a hard time comprehending, we could basically have it as a thing that we agree on this, how it should be communicated.
Great. Maybe one other thing to mix in here is we had a team breakout to do a attestation Wikipedia page, and I lost track of that. Does anybody know how that's evolved or if that's still active?
By golly, I think I remember hearing that they actually published it. So I'm just looking right now.
No, we published the confidential computing one. We didn't publish the attestation one.
That is not and I do have a link to it. Let me put it in the chat. Here it is.
That does seem like an even better place, maybe, than the Confidential Computing Consortium, just because it's
well, except that is mutable, right? Wikipedia pages are very mutable, so we need to watch that. But yeah, we need the attestation thing needs to happen as well. Agreed. The web page, someone needs to own this and make it theirs. And we don't, I think, currently have anyone who's doing that.
This is Hank. Starting April, I might actually be okay with dedicating time to this, but I definitely welcome help and would not like to be the, I don't know, front. But yes, I think Wikipedia is something that takes continuous attention. It's not something that just stays there, and it is a dialogue to some extent and some curation, of course, because that's the intent of the semantics of Wikipedia and Wikidata. So yeah, I think it's one place to reflect what we want to do here. So there is a source, the origin. I think that's in here with our document, and the reflection, one reflection of it could be Wikipedia. And I would agree with that, yes. And then yeah, we go from there.
Going back to my database days, single point of truth, and you link from that. And we've got to be the single point of truth.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I can see having a concise definition on our webpage, and then the Wikipedia article, I think, serves to offer disambiguation across all of these competing or separate definitions of attestation. So they're sort of reinforcing. And I see in the chat, Rian's got a link for the cloud native terms. So that's another good thing to look at. So that might be if we can capture some of these in the minutes, that'll be good to be able to refer back to.
Yeah. I'm happy to speak to the Cloud Native glossary as well. I'm an editor over there. That's actually a community-driven effort. It happens to be on a CNCF URL, but we were able to get community members to become excited about and participate in defining these terms. And this is, I think, one of our most this is our one of our highest traffic sites, if I'm recalling our analytics correctly as well. So there's a lot of upside for these.
Well, I'm glad to have you here for this this context. It's very timely.
Yeah, I'll take advantage of the fact that there are no hands up and ask Nate a follow-up question. If you'd be so kind, it seems like this is a really cool glossary. I love it. How do you manage terms that are going to have competing definitions on Wiki? For example, virtual machine is something that I imagine has been defined a million times.
Yeah, and so what we wound up doing actually is we've got a process for both suggesting. So there's actually a couple of things about this particular glossary. We've actually decided that our audience is a non-technical one, so stakeholders, decision makers, folks like that. And so our goal is to make sure that, I mean, technical correctness is our highest calling, obviously, but we also want to make sure that folks who aren't engineers understand the definitions. If you go to your boss and say, hey, we want to use this, and put them at the glossary, that person who may not be an engineer or may not have been an engineer for 20 years could still understand what's going on over there. And so to do that, we have processes for both suggesting new words as well as suggesting edits to words. And then and we need to be better at being open about this, but we have our editors meetings and we make a decision about, okay, which words should be accepted, and we make decisions on whether or not edits should be made. So we have an issue list. This is all in GitHub. If you go to the github.com/cncf/glossary, you can see our issues lists. And then we have a robust editing process where we actually make sure that we have two technical editors, and then because English is our first language on this, and localizations come from English, we also have an English language copy editor. Go through and make sure that the terminology is like I said, for that non-technical audience. And so it's really a discussion with the technical editors as to what changes should or shouldn't be made. And when people make suggestions, it becomes a discussion. Some of our PRs have got tens and 20, like there's a lot of discussion around what the term should be defined as. So it's it can be messy, but it's a discussion.
Thank you.
Mike?
That was super good.
Yeah, so I'm going to make a proposal. I'm sorry, but this sounds like we may need a standing terminology SIG. Doesn't mean it needs to meet all the time. People who have, put their hand up, kind of literally, and say, yeah, I'm happy to be part of this. And it doesn't need to be, necessarily regular meeting. There will be, ins and outs and times when it meets more often than others. But it sounds like we need some people who are just going to own this and then write the stuff up, take it to the TAC for general approval, but who actually can move this forward. Because otherwise, I have a feeling that it's just not going to move forward.
And I wonder if the way that we could construct a SIG like that is just having an initial set of maintainers on a terminology repository. And that way, if we don't need verbal discussions and we can do things asynchronously, which sounded like the way that you're doing things, Nate, but correct me if I misunderstood that, then we could save people some meetings and still have that productivity.
Here, I'll make a counter proposal. The specific use case that we had with CSA, where we were trying to make use of the basic terms in confidential computing, TEE, attestation, some others. Maybe we can do a pilot where we have, I don't know if it's a glossary or if it's I don't know about the web infrastructure that would be required on the CCC website in order to bootstrap this. But if we could come up with the absolute simplest way to get 4 terms defined and see how that goes. If it takes us 12 months to get 4 terms defined, then we need to punt and take a different tack. But if we can get these 4 fundamental terms defined within a reasonable amount of time, by, come up with a process as you're suggesting, Dan, maybe a sub team, or if that doesn't work, then a full scale SIG. Just see how it goes and see what we learn from the process. What do you think?
I like that.
That sounds like a good MVP approach. Let's get done what we need to do initially before creating a whole lot of...
I would warn you that getting the initial phrase that we used to describe a TEE took us 6 months when we started off the TAC, but that doesn't mean it needs to take that long again.
We're much faster now.
Well, we've got that foundation to stand on, right? We've got the shoulders of giants that we can stand on. So hopefully the addition of a few extra words won't take as long. Sorry, Hank, didn't mean to speak over you there.
No, not a problem. You're saying all the right things. And I just want to say, if I had more time, I would have written a smaller letter, a shorter letter. So the same thing is happening here, right? 4 terms takes way longer than 12. And that's the problem. And so I try to translate a German idiom. We can do one thing and also not do the other. So we can do what Mike highlighted, and we can attempt at the same time what you highlighted, Alec. And so what I'm saying is that actually, to be honest, so take this with the grains of salt, because you're talking to and this is head-on, TCG attestation working group share. And attestation stick makes some sense, because if you knew how difficult it is to get attestation done in TCG, who invented that 25 years ago, I would say some formal cluster to flock around is useful. That can be a repo. It doesn't have to be a SIG first. But I want to echo Dan here. Yet some rally point, a flag to gather around at that is more than a amorphous Google Doc. I want to say is useful, I think. So people can know, and we don't have to need regular meetings or something, because you can self-organize to some extent, but the flag has to be there. And it is either a repository or a SIG, and I would go with that scope. If it's more loose, I think it's just, there will be no reflection on Wikipedia at the end, I think.
So one of the ways that we've been able to move faster, things that we've learned together, is if somebody takes the pen initially and creates the initial content, and then as a group, we're good at refining that. But it's kind of less efficient, it's turned out to be in the past, to have a blank document and have a whole lot of people try to.
We know who that person is. I'll do it. It's always me. And tell me what 4 terms you want to try and define, and I will start with something, and then everyone can disagree with it, and that'll be great.
And then you can choose whether one path is to do that on a Google Doc and get the first round of beaten going, and then in sort of an annealing process, get it onto GitHub, where we would have smaller but more controlled changes, and then that can become published to the web page.
Okay, well, tell me what terms that TAC wants me to try and ill-define or misdefine, and I will do that.
Great. So Alec sounds like he has a informed opinion on that, so I would defer to Alec.
Here's what I'll do, Mike. I'll go back to the notes that I have, or actually the document that we were editing for the CSA, and I'll pull them out. But if you start with TEE, attestation, root of trust, confidential computing, I think there's 4 right there, top of my head. Mark, I know you were on the call before. Not sure if you're still there now. Do those sound like the right terms to start with?
I can start with those. 3 of those are easy, because we have existing ones. We can disagree with them, but we've got easy ones. The attestation is the hard one. But yep, it sounds like I've got some work to be done. And the other thing, I'm the exec director. I can say whatever I like, and everyone can disagree with it. So that's absolutely fine. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
That sounds cool. And again, I think we noted that the terms were well defined in the terminology paper. Yeah, Mark Novak, I was asking you to comment on the 4 terms of choice. Let me just finish my thought, and then I'll say we know that the terms are well defined, or at least defined in the terminology white paper. What we didn't want was for an audience of auditors who is reading the cloud controls matrix, because they're just trying to see whether or not their IT technology can pass an audit and meets the requirements set forth by the CSA. They come upon one of these terms. We didn't want them to have to read the entire white paper, because they just don't have the background for it. That's the goal. That's what we're looking for. I'll go back on mute now.
That's fine. People have added TCB to the list as well, which I think is worth putting in. I'm happy to do that too.
From chat. Okay.
Mark Novak, did that all sound about right to you, or
Sure.
do you have more documents?
That's a great starting point, and we can take the rest offline.
Cool.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, that was an unexpectedly great conversation to come up out of what I thought was going to be a 5 minute. Hey, somebody asked us to publish our definitions. So that's great. The next great topic that we have here is one of our priorities. One of our priority areas is how we grow our community. And so Yash had volunteered at the outset of the year to take point on that. And I will hand it over to Yash for that.
Thank you, Dan. Can everybody hear me?
You're faint, like it's picking up the wrong mic or the mic is away from your mouth.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just speak louder. I hope this is better.
That's great.
Okay, thank you. So one of the, well, not issues, but the way of working is that we did not have a dedicated mentoring program in the CCC, and the CNCF actually has a great one. Huge thanks to Rian for making me understand the difference and how we should approach this in the CCC. So last year we had two willing mentees who wanted to work with the CCC, Vaishali and I forgot the other person's name. I'm sorry. So we had two mentees who wanted to work. One of them is still currently a mentee with the Verizon project, and kudos to Thomas for guiding her. The second mentee, I was mentoring her, but we couldn't find a project for her to work on, and she actually got a full-time offer to work at the OSI. So she's still in the open source community and she is interested. But that highlighted one of the issues we had, is that we had willing mentees, but we didn't know what their skill sets were, where to fit them in. And the CNCF approach sort of addresses this, where it's the projects first put out a proposal of here's a list of here's the scope of the project, or here's a scope of something that my project would like a mentee for. And then from a pool of Linux Foundation mentees, they apply for the project. The maintainers of the project can interview them. You get mentees with the right skill set. And then it is 12 weeks long. And there are milestones that the mentee needs to achieve. And it's all very standardized. There are 3 terms in the year. There is the spring term, the summer term, and the fall term. I'll share a link in the chat for people who want to follow this. And Nate has been very willing to help us explain how the CNCF, which has a lot more projects than the CCC does, run the mentoring program on the CNCF side. And I think this is a great opportunity for projects to get more, get new people involved in their projects, find more maintainers eventually, and get more contributions from the open source community. So I'd like to hand it over to Nate, who can walk us through the CNCF mentoring program.
Yeah, hello. So first off, thank you for inviting me. I'm always excited to try and branch out and work with my Linux Foundation colleagues on other projects. I can actually share my screen here if you'd like, and sort of walk through some of the process that we go through. One of the and forgive me here, I'm actually on an iPad still. I'm still in my morning mode. I do have coffee now though, so thank you for the long and spirited discussion on glossaries. Gave me an opportunity to make some coffee. So sorry, well, I'm just trying to figure out how to share the screen here. Share content, screen, and yeah, okay, start broadcast, 2, 1, and okay, so now I'm sharing the screen. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So the one thing I would like to add actually to Yash's comments about the CNCF program is that we actually, another important part is that we pay our mentees. They're not employees, but every mentee gets a stipend between 3,000 and 6,600 US dollars, depending on where they live and what the cost of living is in their place. I think that's important to it's important to pay people for their work, especially when they're just starting out. And so I'm very proud of the fact that all the programs that we run and all the programs that we participate in are paid mentorships. So they're all stipends. Like Yash said, we do. It is important that the mentors, i.e., the maintainers, make the decisions they're the ones who make the decisions whether or not the work provided is sufficient to pass the evaluations. We run two evaluations per semester, and so one of the things that I think is most successful about the CNCF program is our mentoring working group. Like I said, when I introduced myself, I work as a technical writer primarily, or I did. And when Russia invaded Ukraine, the person, Ihor, who was running the program prior to me, had to step away and defend his country. So Chris asked me to take over. And those are some pretty big shoes to fill. Ihor is one of those highly capable people, and so I'm like, oh no, what do I do here? And so we set up as a part of our TAG technical advisory group contributor strategy team. We put together a mentoring working group to try and make it so that we were having these programs administered by the community for the community. And so one of the things that we're doing is recruiting mentorship administrators as well as folks, technical administrators and whatnot, to help with data analysis, to help with running and making sure that Google Summer of Code, for instance, is staffed correctly and whatnot. So it's not just, again, a CNCF staff member doing this. We also have community members participating as peers in our mentoring, in administering our mentorship program. So that's the TAG mentorship, the TAG working group. And here in our repo, in our mentoring repo, we've got information, and Rian has been instrumental in this. We've also we're putting together like administration guides. Like we have a GSOC org admin guide for how to run a GSOC program within CNCF. And we're working on one for LFX. We're working on one. We're also looking at working with Outreachy. But we want to make it such that, like, if I were to win the lottery tomorrow and was unable to come into work, what is the program? What's our philosophy? How do we run these things? And how do we move it forward? So we're trying to, as much as possible, put this into GitHub, open it to folks, and let them see what's going on. And so that's the mentoring WG section. So then we've got our programs here, right? And again, Yash is very, very correct. We are very project driven. And so, for instance, we're in our LFX application phase, right? And so we had project ideas come in, but now we've moved them all into our README. We have our timeline for this term. And incidentally, we've actually moved away from saying spring, summer, and fall to term 1, term 2, and term 3 to be a little bit more inclusive and recognize that the summer in the north is not the summer in the south. And so Rian can tell you it's not winter time right now, even though we are in our northern winter term. So right now, so again, what we do is we ask each project to say, all right, do you have any ideas that you think someone who is a junior engineer or maybe a third or fourth year student could do in about 12 weeks with some coaching. We don't actually limit it age-wise. If somebody is looking to change careers, I mean, this is my third career, if I'm counting right. So we welcome folks from all walks of life. But generally speaking, in order to sort of be clear about the skill set we're looking for, that's a good shorthand, is the senior university engineer or whatnot. And we ask them to put things together. We ask, okay, what's the description? What's the expected outcome? And what are the upstream issues that support it? And once they put this in, then we actually move over to the LFX program, or platform rather. And you see, we've got.
You with a question?
Sorry, I don't have. Again, I'm on an iPad here, so please help me to catch questions here.
Yeah. A way to like send this out to, I don't know, like career centers. Like, is there like a link that I could share with potential applicants?
So that is, for us, that is this page. So I often will share this URL up here. I don't know if you can see it. And the reason I do that is because on the LFX platform, I can't share like a search. And so this becomes the source of, like, and this is why I have like the LFX URL here, right? So when we do our like LinkedIn posts or Twitter posts or Mastodon posts, we will link to this page for potential candidates to look at and to see what they're interested in seeing. Does that answer your question?
Would you point copy the link into GitHub to the chat?
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, I thought yeah. So that's the current live term for our LFX. And the other thing I actually wanted to share is like, for instance, here right now, we're also collecting proposals for Google Summer of Code, right? And so this is like literally live, like this is what they do. They put a proposal in, we vet it, right, before we sort of put it in the proposal pile and make sure that it's reasonable, right? As an administrator, it's not my job to say yes or no, this is a good idea for Captain. My job is to say, okay, does this look like it's enough work? Does this fit our template? Does this check all of our boxes, right? Again, we have to trust our maintainers to know what needs to be done for their projects, and our job is to sort of support them in doing that. And so once they are sort of in the system here, you see, we can then see like the current applicants and the tasks and whatnot that they're able to do. The LFX platform, how can I say this diplomatically? What it does pretty well. But there's a lot that I do outside of the system, and so I'm not going to share because there's PII. I'm not going to share the spreadsheets and whatnot. But we do keep a separate track of all of our projects, the mentors, the URL links for specifically the mentors, the mentees, the evaluations. We use Google Forms for evaluations so that we can send those out to the mentors and whatnot. And so we do a lot of that sort of externally to the LFX platform. And like I said, I'm willing to walk somebody through privately if you're interested in figuring out how to set that up. But yeah, that's kind of how we do it in a nutshell. A lot of programs will use their upstream issues to, I'm going to scroll right down to the bottom here. I think Wasm Edge does a really good job on their system here. What they'll do is they'll say, okay, here's a pretest for this mentorship, right? And they will open up a comment or a discussion and say, okay, if you're interested in doing this, then part of the application process is to open up a branch on your own and prove to us that you can do this type of work. You've got to be able to build something in Whisper CPP. You've got to make sure that these things are working and provably so. And so what they do is they say, okay, here's the issue and here's the repo that they're showing to show that they're actually engaged and capable of doing the work as a part of their application process. So even though they may get several hundred applicants, it's the folks who are paying attention and reading through and actively engaging that are likely to be on their short list. So I always bring up Wasm Edge as an example of a really good use of their upstream issue and a really good process. So I'm going to stop for a moment here and just ask if there's any questions, or am I being clear and helpful? Or
super helpful, super clear to me. I have a question. I'll pause for just a sec to make sure not somebody else wasn't getting in.
I'm going to stop my share because I'm not sure that I need that right now, but there we go.
So I would say that the most difficult problem that we have had is having available mentors. So having maintainers from the projects that have the time and willingness to do the coaching.
Yeah, I agree. And I commiserate or empathize. One of the benefits of the CNCF program is that, well, the LFX program is, it's nice because it's our program, right? We run it. We can be flexible with our dates. We can be flexible with certain other bits. Whereas, for instance, Google Summer of Code are fairly notorious for being very rigid with their dates and very rigid with how they run things. So because we're so project driven, I kind of bend over backwards for our maintainers. And one of the things that we implemented a couple of years ago is on those proposals, we said, okay, you don't need to be a maintainer to be a mentor, but you need a maintainer to approve of the project or the proposal, right? So if a maintainer has a trusted contributor, and they say, you know what, this person is good. We know the type of work that they do. They're able to mentor this level of work. We trust them and say, okay, as long as you've given that, we'll often ask those maintainers to like approve those proposal PRs to ensure that the project is approving, right? But that lowers, because maintainers are our most time-starved community members, no doubt. And so anything that we can do to sort of spread that load, we've done, and that's really helped. The other thing that we do is we also, it's not a hard and fast requirement. Again, there's not a lot of hard and fast requirements, but one of the major ones I do try and push is that you have at least 2 mentors per proposal. And part of the reason for that is it spreads the load out. If somebody's busy one week, somebody is still going to be there available for the mentee, but also it means that if somebody has an unforeseen issue and can't, let's say, make the eval date, there's a second person who's capable of doing the evaluation and whatnot. So that's helping to support the mentee, but it's also helping to distribute the load. And for our Google Summer of Code program, it is actually a requirement for us because of how strict Google is with their dates. We can't risk somebody going on vacation and not telling us and forgetting about that. So does that help sort of answer your question?
It does, and I've got some follow-ups, but I see our summer contributor with his hand up.
Can I go?
Yes, please.
All right. I think the beauty of this method is at the moment we have a push system where we find a mentee and we push them towards the project, and the project need to find work matching the skill set. But what Nate is proposing is a pull system where the project identify work, and then it's almost a job interview level of discussion. It's not an employment arrangement, but you can now get a pool of people, pick the right skill set of premier quality skills that's going to fit with your project. And it actually helps the project and it doesn't burden the project. So if you can market it to the projects as bring a solvable problem, tell us the skill set, we'll bring people that you can choose from. And it makes it so much, then it's not a burden, then it's a help.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a very good point. And I'd like to bring up a couple of other, I love bringing up Lee Calcott and Layer 5. The Second State guys, folks over at for Wasm Edge, same thing. They've built up companies that are supporting and dependent on open source. And I asked them point blank, Lee Calcott is one of our most prolific mentors, and I asked him, how do you like? There's a lot of work. How is it that you've got so many? And he says, well, it's yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's a force multiplier. They're getting work done that they need done, and they're growing their communities, right? One of the statistics we dug up last year, mentees who contributed to Meshery, a CNCF project, went on to contribute to 33 other projects in CNCF. And that's a huge impact, right? And so it's if you can get your member companies to buy in on your mentorship program, they benefit by they're getting work done. They're training up their employees or maintainers, contributors to do, like, not everybody comes into open source knowing how to hire somebody. This is a learning process for a lot of folks, and you can show it's a growth path for, like, I think all of our mentors should be using this in their promo packets, right? And the project gets a piece of work done, right? Like it's at the end of the day, Rian's absolutely right. We know what work needs to be done. If we trust our mentors to propose those and get the right people in, you're also growing your communities. I feel like I'm going into my sales pitch here, but it's
you're preaching to the choir on that. So yeah, we're all on board. The challenge we have is bringing that gospel out to the maintainers.
Yeah.
In the past, we used the outreachy system, which is similar to what you've described. So we participate there too. They're listed as job postings, but getting maintainers to write those up has been well, not to write them up, but just to have interest has been difficult for us. I'm kind of curious from a numbers perspective, and I don't expect you to know this, but maybe if you have this data offline, if the pool of maintainers that are volunteering their time here amounts to 1% of CNCF maintainers or 50%, that might help us adjust our expectations.
Very good question. So we have 180 projects now. I think we just increased by about 3 last week. And since I kept records, we've had 55 projects participate. So that's I don't have exact numbers on like how many mentors that represents, but in the last 3 years, 55 CNCF projects have participated in our various that's LFX, that's Google Summer Code, that's Outreachy, and so that's actually one of my goals this year, is to increase the number of projects participating. Particularly in our sandbox. I think the sandbox is the space where we can make the most impact for community growth. Right now for our LFX platform, we've got for this year, not this year, for this current term. Oh, excuse me. We have, I believe, 50. You know what? I have the numbers. Let me just look at them. Let me just, bring it up. 27 CNCF projects with 55, no, I'm sorry, 81 mentors for this term. So we're doing fairly well in terms of like my goal is to run about 150 mentorship programs or projects this year. So we're on pace for that, and that we've got 81 mentors for 27 projects. It tells you obviously everyone has at least two. Some have three. Very few have four. I don't like it when they have four. That tends to be unwieldy. But again, I have to trust the projects. If they're saying, yeah, we want four, then four they get. I wouldn't accept five. Nobody's come to me with five yet, but I would be like, why do you need so many mentors for one person? So yeah, so that's our numbers for right now.
That's great to know. Okay, so that was like 10% annually and 15% this year. So I think that helps us dial that in.
Yeah.
Very patient with their hand up while I keep asking questions. So go ahead, Sal.
Yeah. So all of the security interventions that I've ever done, there's OpenSSF branding all over them, but that's just because of the scorecard. They've all been inside of CNCF and they've all utilized this kind of assistance. So I think there's two things that we have to, well, three maybe, right? So we know that we don't have the same maintainer base as CNCF. Some of these projects, right? A mentee will come in and then they'll come in live to an event and they won't know the maintainers because there's 10 maintainers. So it's a different numbers game there for the people who can come in and do work. If we can, I think it is realistic for maybe 3 of our projects to scope to a 12-week specific like feature development. Absolutely. But I also would love to open the conversation around using basically these programs in the way that I do, which is recognizing there's an absolute lack of security training for any of them anywhere. And so within this program, I say, does a CNCF maintainer want to give up 5 hours, 10 hours of this time in order for them to get security trained and put these interventions in? One thing I believe that would be important in this case, we could do a smaller scoped mentoring project on every single one of the CCC projects in order to get their CLO monitor scores up. That's not an arbitrary request. We know that there is going to be full observability of our scores from CLO monitor for any LF project in the next quarter or two, and it would let us get ahead and make sure that we've got somebody not only who has helped us to put those into place and has responsibility for it, but now embedding someone who's paying attention to basic open source supply security and hygiene inside of our programs. It gives us stable contributors, really involved contributors. I personally, thankfully so far, have never heard of anyone having a negative experience in that mentorship program. And I have met dozens of people. I think it's so worth getting involved.
Great. And Sal, where did you say they get the training?
So when I refer to this training, so I run the security slams. So we go through and we do a bunch of automation and make sure that everything that they would need to do that is known as best practice is available automatically in a GitHub repo and a GitHub issue with a checklist of things that they must get done. One of the things that really helps to constrain here is making sure that, like, number one, what is the scope of deliverable skill sets the mentee will be receiving? In this case, it's security, and that's these 12 aspects of security. If they accomplish all 12 aspects of the security over this repo, not only are they much more familiar with the way that open source contribution works, they are significantly more familiar and possibly the only one on the project that has now that security education for that project. So they're much, much more likely to stay involved because they're the ones that get tagged into those little patches and things moving forward. It fills a gap in employable training in a really time efficient way. And it also makes it so that if they finish that and all of those are check marked, it's the only way to 100% say the skill set and the labor were matched.
So did I understand that right? That basically you would be the offering the training. The time hit to this goes not to the maintainer of the project, but to you.
Yeah, it goes to me and it goes to the 7 other developers behind CLO Monitor and the security slams. So what we do there is we recommend all these best practices. We work with maintainers and the mentees that they bring in. Whenever there is a best practice that is not appropriate for a class of projects, we're able to then identify it, right? So whenever there's something that's a really interesting security problem that doesn't work for all projects, that's how we identify it. So it makes these mentees incredibly valuable in the way that they learn about their projects.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Yash?
Yeah, so from a CCC perspective, I think, just, as you said, setting realistic expectations about how many projects we can actually expect proposals from. I was thinking 3 or 4, and then, then we shouldn't focus on GSOC or Outreachy this year unless, you have capability, you have the maintainers who are willing to do that. Because as I understand it, GSOC and Outreachy are more of a time commitment as opposed to the LFX one where you can define your scope. So we should focus on one and we should do it well. We hopefully by the time the term 2 starts, we will have 12 projects. So we have 8 now. I see that Rust, SPDM, and Verti are now on the website. They're officially projects, which is great. We'll have 3 more. And the way I think we should approach this is, if you are an incubation project, you should, the CCC absolutely expects you to put a proposal because it will help you grow your community. It will help you get more maintainers. There is opportunities to learn and work with other projects in the space. So yeah, that's my approach.
Okay, so that's maybe another thing to minute is whether we add a requirement that to leave the initial stage, you have to have done some mentoring. Your project has to have provided that.
I'm just going to jump in because I think everybody's quiet again. I just want to make a note. I was thinking about what you folks were talking about with Google, or with your glossary, and Google Season of Docs has, I think, a branding problem. It's people, because it's so closely related to Google Summer of Code. It is assumed to be it is assumed to be a mentorship program, and it isn't. So Google Season of Docs is a program that is looking for projects that have a problem which can be solved by writing. And so and I'm bringing it in because it used to be a part of our mentoring program, and we were also talking about writing, and so I figured now is probably a good time to bring it up. So if you have something like a glossary, or if you've got a project that needs technical writing done and has done up, is capable of doing up a proposal, it's a very good program because Google. Well, it's a very good program because it's a good program, but it's Google also will pay for a technical writer to solve a writing problem that a project has, and so it becomes a resource. They don't hire junior technical writers. They hire the technical writers that are best suited for the project at hand, and this can be even up to a 6 or 8 month project. So it can be a long-term thing. So I just want to bring that up as a resource for something like a glossary, or something like technical documentation for some of these projects that might be up and coming and whatnot. just because but again, like because of its branding, people think it's a mentoring program, and it really isn't. The other thing is, unfortunately, I need to drop in about 5 minutes. I've got another meeting to attend, but I don't. If you still need me, I'm happy to stay longer. But I wanted to sort of make sure that I got all of the questions that you had answered before I just unceremoniously wandered off.
Yeah, I was thinking about 30 minutes for this topic, and that's about what we are coming up at here. So any last questions for Nate before the next meeting takes him away? Okay.
Yes, I agree with Sal's comment. That's exactly the type of thing that you can do with the Season of Docs. Like I said, it's a really good program, and they hire some really good experienced folks. But the thing is, the trick for that is for us is supporting our projects in the proposal writing, because the proposals are quite a bit more in depth than a Google Summer of Code proposal, and so that's where we're as the foundation, the CNCF is supporting our projects by saying, hey, here's the timeline. If you need help writing this proposal, we'll go through that process with them, and we because we join as an org, usually we also help manage the payment processes and all that sort of stuff to take that off of the project's plate, which is actually a surprisingly important piece. If you can take payment stuff off of your maintainers, they will love you for it.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for the time, Nate.
Thank you so much for having me. And literally anytime, if you have any other questions or you want to talk about mentorship or technical writing, I will bend your ear for hours. So thank you all. Talk soon.
Thanks so much. Yash, would you like to summarize any takeaways from this discussion for everyone? Just put you on the spot to do that. I just want to make sure, like, we've had this great discussion about all the options and some of the constraints, and so I want to make sure that we leave the conversation with some tangible next steps, or at least a common understanding of a few of the points.
Right. So I think this is a great opportunity to get the maintainers more involved in CCC operations, bringing in new contributors. And the way that I would like to approach mentoring this year is to kind of set realistic expectations and not try to do everything, like not try to do 3 programs for all projects, but kind of see the response from our projects, from the maintainers, see what kind of an experience they have, and be realistic about the approach. I think the 2 terms that are coming up this year is a great way to do that as we increase our number of projects. And yeah, as I think Sal said, having 3 or 4 would be a great win. So having 4, let's say 4 CCC projects participate in LFX mentoring would be great. And that would be my goal. So I can drive that. I can reach out to the maintainers. I can, whenever a deadline is coming up, I can help them through the process, coordinate with Nate. I will be more than happy to work on that. So, yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks very much for leading us through this, Yash.
Tu viens de rentrer? Non, je vais y aller.
And Samuel, you got an open mic.
Sorry about that, folks.
De rien. So back onto the agenda. Let's back up here. The next topic we had was to get into the goals. There we go. And what I want to accomplish today is just to make sure that we've got good coverage going across the goals that we agreed to. And I think that we'll be able to wrap up fairly quickly thereafter. The other topic was going to be just a check-in on the budget, but Ben has had to switch to his next meeting. And we can get to that next time without, I think, encumbering anything. So we've got our working doc, but and maybe I will bring that up, but just as a reminder, we've got this goal that, you know, we're all here because we think that we can actually make things more secure for people by getting this technology out there, and that the three ways that we want to go about doing that are making sure that we've got projects that are effective and they're adoptable, that we've got explanations like we were talking about earlier into the ecosystem so that people actually understand what it is that we've got and how to use it, and that we're developing this community, and part of developing the community is bringing in the new contributors. So Yash was, I think, the first in our TAC community to volunteer to lead something, and so thanks again for that. And I feel like the community piece of this is well covered. Kellen and Alec and Mark Novak have volunteered to lead different pieces of this ecosystem work. So within that, we've got the kernel SIG that we also talked about earlier, and Ketelin will be helping to coordinate on that. I don't know if you want to say a few words about that. Put you on the spot all of a sudden, unexpectedly.
I was looking for the unmute button. So I mean, I don't think there's a lot to say at this point. I think we are looking for, you know, people to actually be representing, you know, various projects and companies there. Yeah, as you said before, I think we'll have something soon in terms of scheduling.
Great. Well, thanks for helping to lead on that. So one of the things that we traded notes on off list was figuring out who's the right people at our companies to be present there. So that's something for all of you to think about. And again, I should stop saying companies, but projects, your research interests and so forth. So people who are working on confidential computing, but not necessarily within the kernel, or vice versa. You're working within the kernel, but you might not have as much depth or experience with confidential computing. Want to get those two groups together. Alec already working with Mark within the GRC stuff, and then we just had this good conversation about the terminology. Alec, is there anything that you want to add into what we've already talked about and priorities and things of that nature?
Yeah, I'm having trouble finding my unmute button as well. I kind of will leave it to Mark as the GRC SIG chair to drive direction on the GRC, but from the TAC, I think what we need to do is work with the GRC to when they have a need to define terms, when they have a need to engage with standards bodies and so forth, that needs to come directly from the TAC and from the CCC as a whole. We've been down in that GRC committee, and we're trying to find ways to interface with standard bodies, having sort of closed the chapter with the CSA. If we approach them simply as a SIG, it doesn't carry as much weight as the CCC. So I think we've just recently discovered the need to interface with the TAC more closely, and I'll serve as that liaison.
Excellent. And I do not think that I see.
Can I just add to that, which is that this one has occasions where if it's helpful to roll out someone with the title, then Sal as TCA or me as exec director always available for those sorts of conversations. So feel free to reference either of us, get us involved, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and we've enjoyed having you in the SIG meetings. They're now every other Wednesday. Feel free to hop in.
Come in from time to time. Thank you. So on this note, slightly actually, so I'm going to be at Rocky Mountain Cybersecurity Symposium in a couple of weeks' time, which is very NIST heavy, apparently. If any of you or your colleagues are going to be at that, it's government and defense focused, and as I said, fairly NIST heavy. If any of you or your colleagues are going to be there, please let me know. I'd love to meet you or your colleagues. Take any leads. I'm available. I'm there, going there for these sorts of conversations and to track down as many NIST people as I can to enthuse and proselytize, whatever it is, about CC. So please be aware of that.
Thank you. All right. So as part of the getting into a regular cadence or an efficient organization here, I want to be able to forecast out some of these topics. As you can see, our agenda schedule for the first half of the year here is it's rolling out on a week-by-week basis, which is not the most efficient way that we can do that. Doesn't give people the most foresight. So I want to start penciling in topics to come in so that we've got good structure to this. So Yash has already accomplished his initial contribution here for this meeting. I think we just lost Nathaniel, but maybe we can get a couple of these other topics scheduled for the people who are still on the call here. So let's see here. So Catalin, I know we haven't had our first meeting for the SIG yet, and that's probably a good first goal is getting that publicized and attended for the first time and getting some regular work going that isn't dependent on meeting schedules. But think about which of these weeks that you could come in and either lead a working session on that topic or be able to provide some outcomes from maybe the initial meeting. Oh, did we lose him? He was just on. Okay, so I guess I will follow up with people individually as we've reached that time where people seem to need to switch out to other meetings. So I'm going to let everybody else do that. One last call, though, for anything that people wanted to get synced on before we have to go our separate ways for the day. Okay. Oh, actually, Alec, I'm not going to ask you to sign up for this now, but we'll want to get you scheduled on here as well. So keep that in mind.
That sounds good. I need to sync with Open Enclave that I'm the mentee for. I really haven't made a formal introduction there, so maybe that's a good topic on where we stand with that project.
Yeah, so we'll that's a good additional topic. So one of the things that Ben and I are working with is getting the project review schedule built out. So we need to have OE come in and pretty much every other project. So we'll see this column get scheduled out. And then for the goal topic that each of us is leading, have that built out separately. And the last thing is the tech talk. So that's open call to anybody through your networks. People are doing a lot of interesting things with confidential computing. We want to make sure that we have a constant injection of technical content into what we do. And so if you know of something interesting that's going on, feel free to coordinate with us over the mail list or Slack, and we'll get that talk scheduled. All right, thanks for everybody's time today, and see you all in the mail list, Slack, or next meeting.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
See you. Take care.